So, without any further ado, who has a question or questions for any or all of our presenters? Sorry. I saw this hand over here.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a fairly basic and technical question, and that concerns the energy supplies to Cuba and what the actual status of possible or potential supplies. I mean, we hear kind of rumours or stories about either Mexico or some other countries are sending shipments of oil, but what's the actual reality that's either going to happen or planned? And there have been stories about even the Russians supplying oil as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Let me try to explain to you what is the real situation that we are facing nowadays. Cuba used to produce the 40% of oil that we consume with a very bad quality because it has a very huge percent of sulfur that create many inconveniences to produce electricity. In the last 2 years, and with a finance from China, we increasing our production of electricity with different alternative sources, like solar one. Now we are producing almost 1,000 of megawatts by different alternative sources. And we continue trying to increase our production, our own production of oil. But it is still at about 40%. So in the following years, we should continue importing oil from abroad. And after the executive order of Trump last January 29, in which he said that he's going to increase tariff of all countries who decided to import oil to Cuba, we didn't receive any single tank of oil. I just explained before what happened in a country without oil. That's why today we are suffering most of the time 20, 30 hours of blackouts. And it is, and of course, people is unhappy because of this, because without electricity, it's not possible to conserve food or anything. So we are living a very difficult times. There are many countries, friendly countries, who said that they are going to support Cuba. But in fact, in the last 3 years, in the last 3 months, we didn't receive any single tank of oil. This is the real fact. And we are trying to continue increasing the production of energy, taking care different alternative sources. Try to reduce the importation of oil, but it takes time. It is not possible to achieve the objective in a short period of time, because before COVID, we used to receive 5 million of visitors in Cuba every year. After COVID, we are receiving less than 2 million. So we don't have the same resources than in the past to have access to this technology that is very expensive. And why we reduce tourism? Because, for example, since Trump decided to remove ESTA visa to everyone in Europe, New Zealand, Australia who decided to go to Cuba. So people from Europe can go to United States without requesting visa. But if you decided to go to Cuba first, you should request permission to go to United States, and they have the right to say yes or no. So now people think twice to go to Cuba for holiday or for every reason. It is still, there are many direct flights from Europe, like from Paris, from Madrid, from Rome, but people think twice now to go to Cuba for holiday because they are going to, they can remove their access to United States without requesting visa. So that's why we try to improve our main industry, that is tourism, but at the same time, we are fighting against all those decisions from the US administration Now we decided not to continue stamp visa in any passport. The process now is very simple because people should fill out a form digitally and send it to us, and we give them electronic visa without stamping in their passport. But anyway, you know that now to have access to the United States, they said that they are going to check even the social media of everyone who decided to visit the United States. So it's very difficult to avoid or not to be sure that people visited Cuba, because there are many ways in which they can know that, even without stamping visa in their passport. This is the real fact that we are facing nowadays. Let's see what happens in the following days. Trump said that he's thinking to in a friendly takeover of Cuba. I don't know what does that mean. I don't know what does that mean to take a friendly takeover of Cuba, because we are able to sit on the table to discuss with them every issue. But as I told you before, there are many preconditions, and the most important one is to preserve our sovereignty. So I think that this is the...
Yeah, so during USA's kind of intensification of its attacks on Venezuela, it deployed 1/7 of its naval fleet in the Caribbean region. And in December, there was one ship with oil from Venezuela. This is before Maduro's kidnapping, on the way to Cuba, and it got basically hijacked, stolen. And when Trump was asked, this is Cuba's oil, right? Trump was asked, what would you do with it? We'd probably keep it. And then there was a Russian tanker, you're right, that was coming down. But then this naval presence, 1/7 of US naval fleets, they were able to divert it away. There was also one Russian tanker that was basically chased out. I don't know if you remember this, by the US naval forces. So they're asserting their dominance in that region, which is blocking any friendly nations from being able to support Cuba. And also with tariffs as well. So Mexico is being threatened with tariffs and many other things, destabilization, right? A lot of those Mexican gangs that were causing violence, they had been armed and trained with connections to the United States. So United States is currently in a phase of hyper-imperialism in the Latin American region. And the biggest stuff, I think the other day I was hearing Cuban pediatric doctors talking about the cancer wards and how they need power. And because, the electricity grid is still dependent on oil, the hospitals aren't getting power, and the Cuban children with cancer, their survival rates is declining because of this. So this is a wholesale effort to dismantle Cuba's achievements. Mm.
Yes, thank you. And that reminds me, when you said, Luis, so last year my wife was offered a free trip to the United States and she rejected it. So I'm not interested in going, but she'd be open to one from Cuba, I'm sure. We have another question over here.
A brief anecdote to illustrate the question. I was in Cuba some 40 years ago, and I had a young interrupter, we call them, interpreter. She was a diminutive young woman of about 20. And an Irish woman in our group asked her how she participated in the Cuban society. So she explained gently, well, she was in the Cuban Women's Federation, and their leaders were part of the senior party apparatus, and she was in her trade union, and likewise. And she was asked, do you want to, when you graduate from the university, join the Communist Party? She said, well, it's not up to me. I have to be elected in it. You know, you don't just join a party, you have to be elected in it. Oh, and the next question was, well, okay, and how else do you participate? Oh, she said, I'm in the militia. There was a gasp. You know, what? You mean with guns and things? Yes, I shoot. I'm not very good, but I am mentally prepared. Now, my question is, that was the morale 40 years ago. With the post-revolutionary generation, where the memory and the memory of their parents of pre-revolutionary times and all that the revolution had done, she had said, we were the brothel of the Americas. We had no schools, we had no hospitals, and now I'm educated and I'm healthy and I have employment, etc., etc. She's now 50-odd. Were her children, or are her children, similarly staunch in support of the revolution, or has, with the passing generations, that affection and affiliation and staunchness declined? Do you think?
Well, if you don't mind, in order to feel free and to answer much better, I'm going to answer in Spanish, and my friend here is going to help me to translate into English. A ver, yo tengo 51 años
I'm 51 years old,
y junto conmigo hay una generación de cubanos que nacieron ya bajo los efectos del bloqueo norteamericano a Cuba.
and together with me, there's a lot of Cubans and a generation of Cubans that were born under this blockade in the United States.
Es decir, todo el que nació después de 1960 ha sido sometido directa o indirectamente o ha sido afectado por las sanciones del bloqueo norteamericano.
That means that after 1960s, everybody has been affected and has been subject of the blockade from the United States.
Y no es menos cierto que no conocieron las bondades o no conocimos, es decir, los que tuvimos la oportunidad de vivir en los 70, 80, conocimos las bondades del socialismo cubano.
And there was that were lucky enough that to experience all of the benefits from the socialism in Cuba from the 70s and 80s.
Pero los que nacieron después de 1990, 1991,
But the ones that were born after the 90s, until 1991,
han tenido que sobrevivir a las carencias, las necesidades, las vicisitudes,
they have to survive the scarcity on all of the hardships that we have to face.
Por eso es que se hace tan difícil el trabajo político e ideológico con los jóvenes.
That's why it's so hard to work on this ideologically with the youth.
Porque es convencerlos de algo que no han tenido la oportunidad de vivir y de experimentar personalmente.
Because it's trying to convince them to go through and live and experience something they haven't had a chance to experience.
Pero al mismo tiempo, los niños, los jóvenes en Cuba, desde muy temprana edad, comienzan a participar directa o indirectamente a través de las organizaciones que los representan en la sociedad cubana.
But from a very young age, kids start participating in different organizations that help them being represented as well.
Y van concientizando no solo la situación de Cuba, sino lo que pasa hoy en el mundo.
And also, it raises awareness of not only what happens in Cuba, but also what happens around the world.
Y aquí Josephine hablaba de las elecciones en Cuba. Realmente es verdad que en Cuba no existe el multipartidismo, existe el Partido Comunista de Cuba.
And Josephine was mentioning that before about the parties in Cuba, that there's no multipolar parties, right? It's just the party of Cuba.
Pero el partido en Cuba no nomina y no elige.
But the party in Cuba does not nominate and does not choose.
Acorde a nuestro sistema electoral, el partido no interviene ni participa en el proceso electoral.
And based on our system, the party does not really intervene in the electoral system.
Sin embargo, producto de ese sistema que tenemos en Cuba y que hemos aceptado aprobar en nuestra Constitución, hoy el presidente de la Federación de Estudiantes Universitarios, por solo citar un ejemplo, es miembro del Consejo de Estado.
And because of that system now, we have, for example, just to give you an example, the union, the Federation of Students, the president of the Federation of Students is right now part of this system too, that's working for the state.
Not only to the system, but he's member of the Council of the States.
There we go.
I mean, he's member of in our National Assembly, there are plenty of youth people participating with their opinion and in the discussion about the most important issues for our society. So the implication or the participation of, since the very early stage of people in Cuba in the main decisions of the country in different ways create a huge commitment with the country. So, en ese sentido, yo creo que en Cuba sigue existiendo un compromiso con hay un fuerte sentimiento de independencia y de soberanía del país.
Mm-hmm. And that's why, because of that, and in that regard, in Cuba continues to pursue this feeling of sovereignty in the country and of commitment in the country.
Estamos hablando de los jóvenes. Cuba es el tercer, cuarto país con más representación femenina en su parlamento.
We're talking about the youth. Cuba is the third or fourth country with the highest representation of women in the parliament.
Es decir, cuando usted examina, evalúa cada segmento de la sociedad nuestra, tienen una participación real en las principales decisiones que atañen al país.
And when you analyze the real implications of this, they do have a real participation of the decisions that are made for the country.
Al mismo tiempo, enfrentamos el desafío de jóvenes que no hemos logrado convencer y que hoy se pliegan a las campañas mediáticas que, por ejemplo, se orquestan todos los días en Miami, en Florida, contra Cuba.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we have part of the youth that we haven't been able to convince yet. And they end up being seduced by these campaigns, these mass campaigns that happen in Miami, in Florida.
Por eso se dan hechos como el que ocurrió hace 2-3 días en Cuba, en que en un horario nocturno y después de 30 horas sin energía eléctrica, quemaron varias cosas, es decir, no instalaciones, pero sí en la calle, quemaron muebles y equipos de determinadas oficinas públicas del gobierno.
And that's why issues like the one that happened the other day, for example, that after 30 hours of outage, people started to set things on fire, not literally buildings, but they started to grab things from buildings and started to set it on fire on the street.
Sí, hay un nivel de cansancio, hay un nivel de agotamiento, no solo en la juventud, sino en la sociedad cubana.
So there's a level of tiredness, of exhaustion, not only just people, but also the society, the Cuban society.
Es muy difícil, por más resiliente que sea el pueblo cubano, someterse a el estado actual de las sanciones norteamericanas, que se han recrudecido mucho más con el gobierno de Trump.
So that's why it's very hard as a people from Cuba to withstand and also to try to survive and go through the sanctions that the American government is putting upon us.
En pocas palabras, podría responderle como que es un gran desafío el que tenemos hoy con los más jóvenes en Cuba.
In a nutshell, I could just say that it's a big challenge that we have ahead of us with the youth in Cuba.
Pero hay un liderazgo.
But it's definitely a leadership.
Dentro de los jóvenes que estamos seguros le darán continuidad a la obra de la revolución.
That we are very certain that they will continue the revolution. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
In 1981, we had the Springbok Tour, where White South Africa, its national sports team, toured New Zealand, and people turned out to protest that and to oppose it. And key members of the ANC leadership who were in prison at the time said getting reports from New Zealand that this sort of solidarity was happening greatly lifted them psychologically, both on an individual level, but even within the spirit of the party and the resistance itself. What can we do in New Zealand in a similar kind of way that could support Cubans and help improve morale by showing their solidarity with them internationally.
Y apoyar a Cuba en este momento.
Les voy a ser totalmente franco y sincero.
I'm going to be totally honest.
Este evento de hoy que ustedes han organizado, puedo asegurarles que en mi experiencia después de 2 años en Nueva Zelanda, es la mejor forma de concientizar a la sociedad neozelandesa en su conjunto de la importancia de la solidaridad hacia Cuba como país que resiste y se enfrenta a las políticas norteamericanas hoy en día.
I'm going to be totally honest. And I've been here for 2 years already, and this kind of events where they raise awareness of the situation in Cuba is one of the best ways that you can help Cuba and support, in this case, and raise the morale for us because of all of the situation that's happening right now in the United States.
He participado en eventos como este, en Wellington, en Auckland, pero la profundidad, el análisis que ha tenido hoy este evento realmente no es el que comúnmente suele estar presente en los eventos de solidaridad con Cuba.
So I've been in Wellington, in Auckland, an event like this, but it is not very common to find the level of depth in which people like you are analyzing the situation and the way of showing solidarity to the people of Cuba as well.
A la vez que le quiero agradecer a los colegas que me han acompañado en el panel, quiero trasladarles también a ustedes un agradecimiento porque este evento de hoy nos permite replicar esta experiencia con ese mismo nivel que ha tenido este evento en otras ciudades cuando los amigos de la solidaridad se reúnen a expresar sus sentimientos hacia Cuba.
And also, apart from saying thank you to my colleagues present here with me, I wanted to say thank you for being present here today because this helps spread solidarity when we go to other events around to express solidarity with Cuba.
De hecho, Josephine me va a acompañar el próximo 27 de marzo a Auckland para tener un encuentro con la Asociación de Amistad en esa ciudad.
Actually, Josephine is going to go with me on the 27th to Auckland to go to the Association of Friendship that is present there.
Y yo espero que en el futuro Jan y el estimado profesor también puedan trasladar su experiencia a otros públicos que no sean solo el de Nueva Zelanda, el de Christchurch.
And I hope that in the future, Ian and also the estimated professor, David, are able to go with me and just go to other places that not only New Zealand, but abroad as well.
A veces es mucho más efectivo escuchar el testimonio de neozelandeses que tienen esos extraordinarios sentimientos de gratitud y de solidaridad con Cuba que a mí propiamente. Es decir, yo creo que es más efectivo el mensaje que a veces ellos trasladan que el que puedo trasladar yo como embajador.
Sometimes listening to people that are New Zealanders trying to share this solidarity and bringing this message of solidarity, for me sometimes more solidarity and gratitude. Sometimes it's even more important than even listening to myself as a.
Yo estoy sorprendido. En Auckland siempre ha existido una asociación de amistad que ha mantenido un trabajo sistemático de solidaridad con Cuba.
Yeah, I'm not surprised because in Auckland, for example, there's always been this union of solidarity, friendship union, that is showing this solidarity and support for Cuba.
Pero nunca había visto levantarse un movimiento tan amplio y diverso como el que hoy se levanta en Wellington y en Christchurch.
But I've never seen a movement that is being brought upon us now, in this case, like the one that is present here in Christchurch and in Wellington.
El próximo 21 de marzo llega a Cuba o va a tener lugar una iniciativa que le han llamado Convoy a Cuba y lidera la activista sueca Greta
Thunberg. 21 de marzo.
21.
So the 21st of March, there's an activity that is happening very soon as well, where Greta Thunberg is going to be present there as well, where we'll be discussing this.
Una buena parte de la intelectualidad latinoamericana, europea, ya está en Cuba y otra parte está llegando para participar en ese evento de solidaridad con Cuba, donde se va a hacer la entrega de donativos que han estado llegando al país en este periodo por barco, por vía aérea, marítima, etc.
So, esto pasa en Cuba, ¿no?
Sí.
Okay. So in Cuba, this event will bring the knowledge and intellectual knowledge, not only present, the one in Cuba, but also from all the different parts of the world, and the aid by ocean, by air, that will be arriving to Cuba as well during that day.
Incluso están llevando una importante carga de sistemas fotovoltaicos, paneles solares, para tratar de apoyar en la estrategia del país para revertir la situación energética en estos momentos.
They're also bringing loads of solar panels and electric grids to help people and revert the current situation that the country is going through.
La última exposición de arte cubano que se presentó en Oakland, se subastaron obras que allí se presentaron, que proporcionó la embajada nuestra, y con el dinero que se recaudó se apoyó una campaña para comprar catéteres para hacer operaciones del corazón en Cuba que no se han podido hacer porque precisamente no nos permiten comprar esos insumos en Estados Unidos.
So the latest campaign that was done was in Auckland, where the art made by Cubans was an auction of all of the artwork, and all of the money that got in the end of that presentation and of that exhibition, they ended up buying catheters for Cuba so they can finally perform their operations and the cardiac surgery that were heavily needed, and because we cannot really buy it directly from the States.
So hay muchas formas e iniciativas que se pueden tener y nosotros, por supuesto, siempre lo agradeceremos como muestra de solidaridad con Cuba.
So as you can see, there are many different ways in which you can support Cuba, and we will always appreciate the solidarity that you are showing towards us.
Pero si puedo expresarlo desde mi punto de vista, yo hoy considero que más que la ayuda material que hace falta, es más importante tener el acompañamiento de los amigos de la solidaridad acá, apoyando nuestra causa y defendiendo nuestro derecho a seguir existiendo como nación soberana.
But beyond the material help that you may try to help us with, I think that the moral support and the solidarity that you are showing from the friends, of course, of the Society of Friends that is trying to support us now, that is the most important thing that will help us continue to thrive as a sovereign nation.
I just wanted to add one thing, is that it's also what David mentioned, is if we are able to weaken the US empire in whatever way we can, that is going to be beneficial for not only Cuba, but the whole world. And the way to do that is to actually have a sovereign foreign policy for New Zealand. Basically throwing the FBI out of New Zealand and getting out of the Five Eyes. And I'm seeing that this position is becoming more and more mainstream. Some political parties are raising this as a position that we need to get out of the Five Eyes. And like we have mentioned, the global imperial system is like a necklace of beads across the world. And the nations in the imperial core, like New Zealand, are quite important in this network. So if we can cut ourselves out of that necklace of imperialism, then that is a blow to the empire. This is what Che said, right? We need 2, 3, many Vietnams. Wherever we can harm the imperial system, that is going to benefit the liberation of humanity everywhere.
Might also just add that when the imperialists engage in some outrageous form of attack or exploitation or whatever, and people oppose it, we need to be careful what we say about that. There was widespread condemnation of the genocide in Gaza, and rightly so. But one of the things that disturbed me is how many people prefaced their opposition to genocide by, I hate Hamas, I hate Hezbollah, but we can't do this. People like Piers Morgan wouldn't let anybody say anything unless they started off by condemning Hamas.
Right.
We are seeing it now in relation to Iran. That even people who are opposing this attack on Iran are prefacing their comments with what an evil regime Iran is. We saw it in relation to Venezuela. People who oppose the kidnap of Maduro preface their comments with what an evil person Maduro was and what an evil regime the Venezuelan government was. And we see it in Cuba, and as they intensify their opposition to Cuba, we will be also hearing stories demonizing Cuba. So I think and one of the difficulties of just allowing this to go, we can see it in the Iran war at the moment, that you have people who go, well, not only is Iran a terrible government, but they've been supporting terrorism. How's that? They've been supporting Hamas and Hezbollah. And we've already bought into this. Hamas and Hezbollah are evil people, and so this is an argument against them. So we need to be really careful about not playing into that sort of game, not playing into that demonization of governments that are having the courage to stand up and defy the forces of imperialism.
Let me add just one more thing. You asked about how many ways you can contribute to your solidarity towards Cuba. In fact, New Zealand used to vote in favor of the Cuban resolution. I mean, we used to present a resolution in the General Assembly of UN every year requesting to put an end to the sanctions towards Cuba. New Zealand used to vote in favor of our resolution. So they express their disagree with this kind of measures against not only Cuba, but also third countries. But at the same time, it's very difficult to concrete practical action. In the past, during 30, 20 years, we used to import powdered milk from here. We had an agreement with Fonterra, and we used to import tons of powdered milk from here. But in the last year, we should pay 50% in advance. So we try to change our approach to that kind of things. And we said we are more interested to increase the production of milk in Cuba instead of continue importing from abroad. So in that sense, we talked to the Ministry of Primary Industry, we talked to MFAT, we talked to everyone, because we realize about the achievement of New Zealand in livestock and agriculture sector. And for example, New Zealand has a program that they call Smart Agricultural Program for Latin America. The main objective of that program is to reduce the green gas emission in our region. And we try to be part of this. And we explain to them many times. But I realize that it's very difficult to concrete practical actions in cooperation, in trade, So one of the most important things is when people from New Zealand write to MPs of your constituencies, because it creates certain consciousness in Parliament, and sometimes I went to Parliament many times, and I met with many MPs from Labour, from Green Party, even from the national one. But I think it is important that not only the embassy, we need to receive the accompany of our friends here in New Zealand, requesting to the MPs the possibility to have a real discussion in Parliament about the support of New Zealand to Cuba. So this is another way that I think that you can use it to push them to be more active towards the solidarity with Cuba.
I'm just interested to know when that support for Cuba stopped and the support of the blockade at the UN. Can you answer that?
We presented that kind of resolution since 1992,
Mm-hmm.
and we received the support of New Zealand since that time.
Oh,
I mean, New
still.
Zealand continued voting
Okay.
in favor of the Cuban resolution, requesting to put an end
Okay.
to that kind of sanctions.
So that support hasn't stopped?
Yes.
Okay, good.
But to translate that New Zealand position into practical
Yeah. Policy.
policies
Yes.
or measures in favor of Cuba, it's
Yep.
more difficult.
Yes.
That,
Yep.
And I realized that when people here write a letter to any MP, they used to answer them
Yes.
in different ways. But it is important to continue having this kind of.
Cool. Yes.
Just before I start my question, I'd like to give a greeting to our hosts, whose house is at Tuahiwi, and of course to our hosts here, more eminently, the Council of Trade Unions local here. And thanks to all of you speakers very much. So I guess my question leads from this, that I think that at one time Cuba, I know this from Castro's biography, Cuba was ready to be the first to die in a nuclear exchange that would have ushered in, or in Castro's words anyway, perhaps destroyed America and ushered in some kind of new world. It doesn't sound good, but that was the courage that the Cubans showed, I think, in standing up to America, even if it meant death for all of them on behalf of the world. That's like being a revolutionary. That's like going to the fight, right? Now today, I would say the rules-based international order is gone, is dead. The choice of negotiation has been taken away from us. So I guess my challenge or question is, and I think this question more falls at the feet of my fellow workers here in this room and more at the feet of our representatives here who go to Parliament for us or go to the bargaining table for us, but you guys will have the privilege of answering it, is how long will we cling to this hope of negotiation, this hope of peace, of a world that was perhaps, maybe at one time possible, but is no longer? How long will we allow those who rule over us to pick off our friends one by one while we come running every time they propose a dialogue? And how long until we return to a time where we believe that the revolution makes forward progress when we take the fight to our enemies?
I'm not going to answer that question. I'm going to try to. Look, in fact, it was actually at Canterbury University. I did a course on a book by E.P. Thompson called The Making of the English Working Class. And its large focus was on the rise of the working class that, among other things, led to the extension of the male suffrage, at least, from the 1810s, 20s, and sort of culminating much more in the 1930s when it was really right. And the basic thesis was that is struggle, and struggle goes in different forms. Every time this is my weakest attack on the capitalist system, but I still do it because I don't like the banks, is that when I go to use my FPOS card to pay for something and the surcharge appears, I deliberately make the point of doing it to avoid the surcharge. That at the very lowest level makes me think that I'm struggling a little bit, even if it makes no difference. It might just feel a little bit better. But I think, you take that further, and consciousness is uneven, and it ebbs and flows. And but as long as the struggle continues, and it's variety of forms, you actually get somewhere in the right direction. And there are setbacks. Bill Anderson, a prominent union leader in the past, quite a long time ago, was always saying that sometimes you have to accept a bit of a defeat in order to be able to fight. You might lose a battle, but you still struggle for the war. And I think that's an approach that, I think that's a large chunk of what is probably going on in Venezuela at the moment. I don't know enough about it, but I have a sense that that's the sort of things that they are having to consider now, some battles that they're just not going to win, but maintaining as enough strength as possible to bounce back and go on. Mm-hmm. Cuba will have the same challenges in a different way. And the dynamics of Cuba are different from the dynamics of Venezuela. But the struggle is important because the struggle gives consciousness. It's all about, if you like, what Marx said and what Trotsky said and others. It's about uneven and combined development.
Tampoco pretendo responder tu pregunta.
I do not intend to answer your question either.
pero voy a tratar de aportar algo para tratar de contextualizarlo.
But I'm going to try to contribute somehow to contextualize it.
Es verdad que estamos viendo un papel disminuido de la Asamblea General de Naciones Unidas y del Consejo de Seguridad.
It is true that we are seeing a diminished role when it comes to the General Assembly of the United Nations and the Security Council.
En contraposición a una agresividad creciente del gobierno norteamericano, no solo hacia Cuba, sino hacia el mundo. Y hoy hay muchos ejemplos que se pudieran presentar acá.
Of course, against there's massive oppression that we're receiving by the American government, not only to Cuba, but also the rest of the world. There are many examples that we can start telling right now.
Groenlandia, para no hablar de Irán, Groenlandia, los conflictos que están habiendo dentro de la propia OTAN.
Mm-hmm. Greenland and all of the other conflicts as well that is happening with OTAN as well.
Pero también es cierto, y ustedes saben, que Estados Unidos está abocado a unas elecciones de medio término el próximo mes de noviembre.
But it's also true that the elections are coming for the United States, in the midterm elections at least, in November.
Y eso obliga a Trump a tener algún resultado que exhibir en política exterior.
And that demands Trump to show certain results, at least when it comes to foreign policies.
Es cierto que el suceso de Venezuela los inspiró, los mantiene, los hizo creerse que podían replicar esa experiencia, quizás en Irán primero, en Cuba luego, pero la verdad es que están atascados en estos momentos en Irán.
And the apparent success they had in Venezuela inspired them to keep going, with this and maybe with Iran, but then with other countries, but then they realized that they're stuck right now with Iran.
En cualquier variante, el resultado de lo que pasa en Irán es desfavorable para Cuba.
No matter what the outcome is with Iran, it will not be favorable for Cuba.
Si se extiende el conflicto en Irán, en el cual ya empiezan a tener cada vez más bajas, más pérdidas y más gastos.
If the conflict gets extended when they start spending more money, they have more soldiers, of course, being killed, and they have more expenses.
Van a querer tener una victoria política antes de noviembre y Cuba está dentro de las posibilidades más cercanas que ellos contemplan.
Well, the elections will be in November, and one of the potential possibilities that are continuing would be Cuba, would be one of the ones that they are considering at the moment.
Y si realmente pudieran ganar el conflicto en Irán, van a sentirse doblemente entusiasmados después de Venezuela e irán para ir por Cuba.
And if they win the situation right now with Iran, they will feel even more encouraged to continue, and even greatly more encouraged now to continue with Cuba as well next.
Entonces, ustedes saben y son conscientes de cuántos problemas internos hay dentro de la propia sociedad norteamericana.
And you already know, you're quite well aware of all the present conflicts and problems that are present in the United States and the society in the United States at the moment.
Todas las elecciones locales que se han hecho para las elecciones locales que se han realizado en Estados Unidos, incluso en los feudos republicanos históricos, han ganado los demócratas.
In all of the local elections that you have seen, even where the normal Republican feuds, right, end up winning, the Democrats are winning at the moment.
Y aunque el movimiento MAGA sigue teniendo un número no despreciable de personas que siguen apoyando la agenda de Trump, no es menos cierto que se puede pensar en una debacle de los republicanos en las próximas elecciones de medio término.
And even if the Omara movement continues to stay strong, this of course shows that it is very possible that the defeat of the Republicans is coming now in the November elections.
Por lo tanto, al menos en el caso de Cuba particularmente, tenemos que tratar por todos los medios de evitar una confrontación a mayor escala o militar antes que se produzcan esas elecciones de medio término en Estados Unidos, lo cual es un escenario probable.
That's why we have to, as Cubans, to avoid, by all means, an escalation, a military escalation or confrontation with the American government at the moment before the elections happen in November.
Ciertamente Estados Unidos es la mayor potencia militar hoy, quizás seguida por China, por lo cual tiene la capacidad de militarmente invadir el país nuestro si lo quisiera.
We have to be honest and recognize as well that the United States is the biggest military power at the moment, probably followed by China. So if they wanted to invade us, they could.
El problema es que para ocupar el país tienen que, no lo pueden hacer desde el aire, tienen que enviar tropas. Y ahí es donde empieza el principal conflicto.
And the detail is that they cannot just do it through air, right? So if they want to do it, they have to do it and send some troops by the ocean, by sea. And that's where the conflict starts.
Y esa sociedad no está lista para recibir muchos ataúdes, soldados norteamericanos muertos, que es lo que ocurriría en un número no despreciable si intentan invadir Cuba.
And that society is not ready to receive coffins from American soldiers. That's what would happen if they decide to take over.
Es decir, el tema Cuba no se puede ver aislado, hay que verlo en el contexto de lo que está pasando en el mundo hoy.
So we cannot really see Cuba as an isolated problem. We need to see it within the context that is happening around the world.
Hay muchas variables que intervienen en una eventual toma de decisión en relación a Cuba.
There are many different aspects to consider when making decisions when it comes to Cuba.
Y el profesor lo planteaba y yo estoy de acuerdo. Hoy está cambiando la geopolítica en el mundo. Y nuevos actores políticos están surgiendo. Los BRICS, la Asociación de Estados del Sudeste Asiático, la ASEAN, y que están jugando cada vez un papel más preponderante en la política internacional.
And I totally agree with what the professor mentioned earlier. The geopolitics is changing. So now we have other actors playing those roles, right? So we have BRICS, we have the ASEAN, right? That is, of course, the Asian region as well. We have many different actors that are changing the way we are working with the world, we see in the world at the moment.
Tu pregunta daría para estar hablando no solo yo, sino todos los que estamos aquí, mucho más tiempo.
Well, your question would probably have us all speaking here for a few hours, not only me, but all of us here in this panel.
roll on November for the US and for New Zealand. That would be great to see some change. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
Yes, a question that's off center a bit. Religious organizations have often given a very weak morally backbone to imperialistic powers. How should countries that have religious organizations that are weak in their moral beliefs, how should we as a New Zealand society, or how did Cuba as a Catholic society handle that?
Históricamente Cuba ha tenido excelentes relaciones, no solo con la Iglesia Católica, sino con todas las denominaciones religiosas que coexisten en el país.
So historically, Cuba has had great relations with not only with the Catholic religion, but also with other religions that coexist in the country.
Y esas organizaciones religiosas en Cuba mantienen con sus homólogas de Estados Unidos y de muchas otras partes del mundo excelentes relaciones.
And those homologues as well keep the same relations as well, not only with the United States, but also with other countries around the world.
Este año precisamente estamos celebrando el 91 aniversario del establecimiento de las relaciones diplomáticas con el Vaticano.
So this year, we are celebrating the 91st anniversary with our relations with the Vatican.
Y hablando precisamente de las excelentes relaciones que mantenemos con la Iglesia Católica y con las demás denominaciones, me viene a la mente ahora un hecho que ocurrió hace 2 semanas.
And now, speaking of the same good relations that we have with the Catholic Church, for example, and other organizations, I just remember something that happened the other week.
El encargado de negocio de Estados Unidos en La Habana viajó a Roma para primero persuadir a los embajadores de los diferentes países que están acreditados ante el Vaticano y luego a las autoridades de la Santa Sede para tratar de interferir en esas relaciones que mantiene la Iglesia Católica con Cuba.
So the business representative that went to the Vatican. Oh, the Church of Affairs. All right. So the Church of Affairs went to directly to the Vatican, trying to convince the other leaders that were present there as well to, of course, stop having this relationship with Cuba that we've had.
The U.S. Church of Affairs in Havana traveled to Rome to convince the authorities of the Vatican try to create conflicts in our bilateral relation between the Vatican and the government of Cuba. That I told you before that we are celebrating 91 years of the establishing diplomatic relationship. Just for you to know how U.S. tried to do its best to create problems, even in our relation, not only with governments, but also with different organizaciones religiosas.
Religious organizations.
Religious organizations all around the world. But, y entonces están tratando de utilizar a la Iglesia Católica en Cuba para hacer llegar una supuesta ayuda a Cuba.
So they're trying to use the Catholic Church in Cuba to try to supposedly bring some aid to Cuba.
Por ejemplo, el año pasado sufrimos las consecuencias de un gran huracán que devastó el oriente del país.
So last year, for example, we suffered the consequences of a massive hurricane that devastated the west part of the country.
Cuba tiene una larga experiencia en recibir donaciones, apoyos, ayudas y en canalizarlas de manera efectiva y comprobada por los organismos de Naciones Unidas a la población. Sin embargo, ellos dicen que no confían en el gobierno cubano y por eso usan a la Iglesia Católica para que intervenga en esos procesos.
We have a long history of receiving aid from many different countries, and we have organizations that are making sure that everything is being done and is being, of course, recorded properly by our organizations. But now they're using the church to show a way of saying, no, sorry, we do not really trust in your institutions. So we're going to send the church now to make sure that you guys are doing the right thing.
Es decir, el gobierno cubano mantiene un intercambio frecuente, sistemático, con las organizaciones religiosas todas que existen en Cuba. Pero al mismo tiempo, esas organizaciones tratan de ser interferidas o utilizadas con el doble propósito de enfrentarlas al gobierno cubano.
Yeah, we've been working directly with the churches as well, the different religious organizations, and we have no problem. But at the same time, they're being used to try to persuade and interfere in how this hate, for example, is being received with the government and the Cuban government at the moment. So.
Cuba tuvo el privilegio de recibir a los últimos 3 papas en La Habana.
Cuba had the privilege of receiving the last 3 popes in Havana.
Karol Wojtyła, Benedicto,
Pope Benedict,
y Francisco,
and Francis.
en 2 ocasiones.
Twice.
Porque el encuentro que tuvo Francisco con el patriarca de la Iglesia Ortodoxa rusa fue en La Habana.
Because the encounter that Pope Francis had with the Orthodox Church, the Patriarch of the Orthodox Church was in Havana.
Es decir, Cuba tiene el privilegio que ningún otro país latinoamericano ha tenido de recibir la visita de los 3 últimos papas.
So Cuba's got the privilege that no other country has in Latin America that is receiving the 3 last popes.
Y el Papa actual recibió al canciller nuestro, al ministro de Relaciones Exteriores, hace una semana.
And the current Pope received the Foreign Affairs Minister just a week ago.
Y la Iglesia Católica, al igual que lo hizo en el periodo Obama, está tratando de servir como puente para una eventual negociación con los Estados Unidos.
And, now the Church as well is trying to be used as a bridge with a potential negotiation with the United States.
Es decir, que está en el mejor ánimo de la Iglesia tratar de lograr un entendimiento entre los 2 países.
So they're trying to do the best they can in order to support both countries and interests of both countries.
Thank you.
Is it time? Okay. Looks like we may need to wrap it up there then. Thank you everybody for your attendance this evening. It's been wonderful and your questions have been great too, and the answers as well. I think we can all admit that we've learnt a lot. I know I have, about what an example Cuba can be for New Zealand. And if we don't buy into the international order dictated by the United States, then we could actually do things in this country that would be in the interests of our people, like you have in Cuba. And so I'm very grateful for what you've shared with us tonight. For all of our speakers here tonight, a big round of applause. It amounts to nothing less than economic genocide that the United States is perpetrating on Cuba, and in whatever ways we can help to bring solidarity, to raise awareness, to offer support, either through resources or through moral support, I encourage everybody here to do so. And I know that it will be gratefully received, and it makes a difference, and that support matters. We may think that we're small and what we contribute is little, but every bit counts and it makes a difference. And so I encourage each and every one of us, I'm speaking to myself as well, to make the effort to do that, so that we become part of the change, not part of the status quo. And thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. It's wonderful.